So we're in a time of circulating flesh. The blood flowing in my body today might be circulating in your body tomorrow if you're O positive. We can extract organs from one body and insert them into other bodies. We can stitch amputated limbs from cadavers and reanimate them on living bodies. At a medical conference in Paris, I met the first double hand transplant, and only after 6 months this person was able to have a rudimentary control of his cadaver fingers. He could sense rudimentary pressure, temperature and texture with those fingers. So we can circulate organs. Organs become commodified parts of bodies that become exchangeable. We also know that we can plastinate bodies and preserve them forever, whilst simultaneous, and display them in ways that we haven't been able to anatomically display bodies before. But we, as well as preserving cadavers forever, we can also sustain comatose bodies indefinitely on life support systems, whilst cryogenically preserved bodies await reanimation at some imagined future. And we're also engineering chimeras in vitro in labs. So there's a blurring of what it means to be a body, how a body operates in the world, and also generally what generates aliveness. You know, what vocabulary of behaviours, what kind of you know, genetic and physiological repertoires of behaviours generate this sense of aliveness. We can also repair the body radically in ways that we couldn't before. We can extract stem cells and re-inject them, replicate them in vitro, re-inject them in vivo, and repair damaged heart muscle, for example. Or perhaps even stem cell grow parts of organs or whole organs in the future.
And it was a lengthy process of approximately 1 year to ensure that he met the true criteria to be the right patient for this transplant. And sure enough, he did meet this criteria. At that time, we described a procedure which would essentially restore everything which was not functioning and appearing normal on his face, which included portions of the scalp, through the forehead, the upper lower eyelids, the nose, upper lower lips, soft tissues of the chin, down to the level of the neck, and the underlying structures, which included the upper jaw, bones around the eye sockets, the upper teeth, the lower teeth, as well as the anterior portions of the tongue.
Dr. Rodriguez, he suffered a gunshot accident back in 1997. Amazingly, his sight wasn't affected. He still had his vision, but as you say, he can now smell something he probably hasn't been able to do, what, for 15 years. He's now talking. Tell us about the moment that he was able to do these things.
So this face from the donor body stitched onto the recipient's skull becomes a kind of third face resembling neither. We can also now take the skin cell from an impotent male and turn it into a sperm cell. And more interestingly, we can take the skin cell from a female body and turn it into a sperm cell. So males are out of the reproductive loop. But also, that reminds me that last year in the UK, a 30-year-old frozen embryo was brought to bear as a healthy child. They reckon they can extend that to 50 years very soon. So the implications of this is that your sibling might be born on your deathbed, and this kind of whole reproductive loop is no longer synced to an individual's existence anymore. So there are sort of social and ethical implications that come out of that. As well as circulating flesh, we're also in a time of what I call fractal flesh and phantom flesh. And by fractal flesh, I mean bodies and bits of bodies spatially separated, but electronically connected, generating recurring patterns of interactivity at varying scales. And when I talk about phantom flesh, I'm not talking simply about avatar, performing as avatars on the internet, but also the fact that with the increasing proliferation of haptic devices on the internet, we'll be able to generate more potent physical presences of remote people. So interaction with force feedback or with a sense of texture, a sense of touch becomes plausible. We're no longer going to be experiencing each other as disconnected images and disconnected or disembodied voices. We'll be able to feel the touch of the remote person. This is a project, just a 3D model, a simulation of a project that's hopefully will be completed this year. It's a six-legged walking robot. It won't be quite as sophisticated as the simulation shows. When you start building real-world robots, they don't quite match your imagination. But this robot is a six-legged walking robot. There'll be a webcam attached and some LED lights, and this robot will be small enough, robust enough to climb up my tongue and into my mouth. I just have to remember not to swallow. We are making several of these just in case. As well as micro-miniaturization of technology, technology is becoming much more user-friendly in that there's recently been a development of flexible circuitry. Flexible circuitry that can be literally stuck on the skin.
A team of scientists led by University of Illinois professor John Rogers has created a new, less intrusive way of gathering data from the human body. Unlike conventional equipment that hardwires patients to a stationary machine, the epidermal electronics, as they're called, attach to the skin in the same way you would attach a temporary tattoo.
Our thought was that if you could convert the electronics from the rigid boxy form that exists today into a format that looks like the skin in terms of mechanical properties, shape, stretchability, toughness, then you could almost make like a second skin that would laminate on the surface of the biological skin in a completely seamless, integrated fashion that would be essentially invisible to the user, but able to deliver all of this kind of new functionality through.
So because of the nature of the circuitry, which instead of sort of rigid, sort of linear configuration is made up of a kind of an S-curve intermeshing, this allows for a deformable circuitry. So whether you stick it over the knuckle of your finger or on your forehead or wherever you place this circuitry, it will not kind of break and it will still be operational. And they've already used this kind of circuitry to monitor brain waves and heartbeat, for example, to wirelessly transmit those signals. So you've now got flexible stick-on circuitry that's literally disposable and obviously much more easier to use. And not only can you monitor body functions, but you can use, say, brain waves as control signals for whatever you want to operate.
Incoming transmission from Robot Headquarters. Robot Headquarters. This is Optimus Prime. Do you read me? We cannot win this war without your help. Megatron must be stopped. Soundwave is attempting to jam the signal. Answer before it's too late. Incoming transmission from Autobot headquarters. This is Optimus Prime. Do you read me?
So the camera software system does simple head recognition and then virtually clothes the participant. Now, of course, you know, it's bulky. You would need a head-up display to see this sort of virtual clothing of the body. But recently there's been a contact lens developed. Only pixels of information now can be transmitted, but they can be transmitted wirelessly within the contact lens. So in the near future, you'll be able just to simply pop in a contact lens and have this sort of augmented reality experience, whether it be data or virtually skinning. This will be something that is unencumbered and enables you to more seamlessly function. I mean, now we're expected increasingly to perform in mixed realities. We're biological bodies, but often we're accelerated by our machines, extended by our instruments, and also we have to manage data in virtual systems. We'll be able to more seamlessly slide between these modes of operation with such miniaturized additions to the body. The suspension performances begin really as kind of very simple explorations of the psychological and physiological parameters of the body. Here, for example, the body is counterbalanced by a ring of rocks, one rock for each insertion point. The body is gently swaying side to side, setting up random oscillations in the rocks. The body in Mexico City spinning. The problem with this performance was that I got sunburnt. A sitting spinning suspension performance. The gallery had 3 levels, so people could sort of see the suspension event from those different levels. So visually it was an interesting performance. And this one is one of the few that was in Australia. The body is suspended in a vertical position from a gantry crane, and it's holding a control box. So everyone thought it was just going to be an up and down job. In fact, the body could propel itself forwards, sideways, left and right. It could reverse. No one was really told what was going to happen, but as the body moves through the warehouse space, people follow. There was a crying child and a barking dog, which kind of added to the ambience of the event. The title of the review for this performance the following day in the newspaper was "A Pain in the Arts." And I discovered by stopping and starting suddenly, I could generate swinging. So this was sort of an unexpected bonus to the choreography that occurred. This performance begins when the body lifts off the ground, and the performance ends when the body touches down. Most of these performances, in fact, the 25-odd suspension performances, are generally done in remote locations or private gallery spaces with very few people watching them, except the Brisbane performance and this one in New York and Copenhagen. But the one in New York was between 2 buildings over East 11th Street. We didn't get permission to do this. The body was prepared in the 4th floor room. When everything was ready, a cable was tensed across the street. The body rolls out of the 4th floor window, has a good view of the police cars that arrived in about 5 minutes. and at about the 12-minute mark, the police broke the downstairs door and pulled the artist back in. What was embarrassing was that they demanded to see my ID, which was a bit difficult under the circumstances to produce instantly. I guess this experience of the suspended body was also an experience of an inadequate body, a body that physically exhausts itself, a body that experiences itself as an obsolete body. And so there was a desire, an outcome of this, a desire to augment the body in different ways, not to accept the biological status quo, to prosthetically attach here a third hand, which was actuated by electrodes on the thigh and abdominal muscles. This project was actually completed in 1980. I recently saw a program on TV with the most recent sophisticated hand called the iLimb. It does nothing better than the third hand did. It took several months to learn how to actuate this, literally by controlling the intensity of electrical signals from the abdominal and leg muscles. And because, and initially it was just a visual attachment to the body, but because these muscles were different from the muscles of the flexor and extended muscles of my other two arms, it meant that I could do separate things with each hand. So here I'm writing one word, each hand is writing a separate letter. At the same time, I have to keep my two eyes on what my three hands are doing, and also remember the sequence of letters, because of the spacing of the three hands, I had to write every third letter. So the prosthesis here is not a sign of lack, it's a symptom of excess. As technology proliferates, as it becomes micro-miniaturized, as it becomes more biocompatible in scale and in substance, it can be a component of the body. A performance with my third hand, this performance also directed laser beams through optic fiber cables to the eyes. By controlling the muscle signals around my eyes, I could literally scribble with the laser beam. So here the eyes are not passive receptors of images, rather they actively transmit light and create an image in the gallery space. This performance began when the body was switched on. And the performance ends when the body was switched off, about an hour later in this case. The sounds that you heard were amplified brain waves, blood flow, muscle signals, the sound of the third hand. What was intriguing was to think of technology not only connected to the body, but also inserted into the body. And in 1993, for the 5th Australian Sculpture Triennale, whose theme was site-specific works, I decided to make a sculpture not for a public space, but for a private physiological space. So this is not a medical instrument. This is a sculpture that was designed, basically a small machine that opens and closes, extends and retracts, has a flashing light and a beeping sound. And with the help of a friendly endoscopist, this was inserted about 40 centimetres into the stomach cavity. The stomach had to be inflated with air to make it safe to insert. Also, the endoscopist insisted on doing this within 5 minutes of a major hospital, because had we accidentally perforated the stomach, this would have been serious news. And the other serious problem would have been because the sculpture to be inserted down the esophagus had to close into a capsule structure. When it was only inside the stomach did it start operating, opening and closing, extending and retracting. It was actuated by a servo motor, a worm screw link mechanism, and the other problem would have been had the sculpture not been able to close. Fortunately, it did close, and we could it could be removed safely. It took 2 days and 6 insertions to shoot about 15 minutes of video, and this was probably the most uncomfortable performance I've done, because it's not only sort of managing external kind of pain, but also, you know, coping with gagging and feeling kind of ill, wanting to throw up and stuff like that. The size of the sculpture fully opened, it's actually about the size of my fist. The hands closer to the lens make it look smaller than it really is. A clean shot of the inside of my stomach. When we first took these still images, the endoscopist discovered a polyp growing in my stomach. So what began as an artistic experiment quickly deteriorated into a medical melodrama. We had to perform a biopsy there and then. The polyp was benign. And this is another device, an 11 degree of freedom manipulator that extends my right arm to primate proportions. So the right arm is a very long arm. Whilst the right arm was actuating its extended manipulator, the left arm was performing involuntarily, computer controlled, sending 15 to 50 volts of electricity to the different muscle sites. The left arm is programmed to continuously move like that for the whole 4 hours of the performance. We also constructed a 3D model of the manipulator. This performance was streamed live, and the 3D model kind of crudely mimicked the movements of the actual mechanism. This also had sound. The sound, though, was not any internal body signals, but rather the sound was generated by accelerometer sensors, position and proximity sensors. So it was the choreography of the limbs that generated the signals that produced the sound. It didn't take much imagination that if I could computer control my arm in a local space, this might be able to be done remotely. This is the muscle stimulation box. The electrical, the blue switches indicate which parts of the body could be programmed. We produced a touchscreen interface by touching the muscles on the computer model. The computer model moves. A second later, your body moves in Luxembourg. I was in Luxembourg, people in the Pompidou Centre in Paris, the Media Lab in Helsinki, the Doors of Perception Conference in Amsterdam, for example, were able to remotely access and remotely activate my body in Luxembourg. From the point of view of the artist becomes a host for the desires of remote agents. And sometimes these agents were malicious agents because, being non-believers, they kept programming the same movement over and over again to see if it really was happening the way that they thought it was. I also had a head-up display though, so I could see the face of the person moving me. So there was an intimacy without proximity, an intimacy without skin contact. Now this is another kind of split body experience. Instead of a left and right, instead of voltage in, voltage out with the previous performance, here the split body experience is upper and lower, and using a pneumatic upper body exoskeleton, this is a simple animation that indicates the limited 3 degrees of freedom. It's only up, out and with a bend, but if you can imagine both arms performing 64 simple bits of choreography can be generated. What made this performance a little bit more interesting was that we had constructed an avatar imbued with genetic algorithms, and it's the avatar's behavior that actuates the upper part of the body. So the upper part of the body is avatar driven, the lower part is free to move with its own agency. So in these performances, they were done with what I call a posture of indifference, as opposed to expectation. So you allow the performance to unfold in its own time with its own rhythm. It's structured but not scripted. It's both a possessed and performing body. Part of your body, half of your body is possessed by someone else somewhere. The other half is a performing, improvising body, and there's voltage in, voltage out. I'd always been interested in insect and animal locomotion, and in 1997, with the assistance of F-18 in Hamburg, we engineered a 6-legged walking robot robust enough to support the artist, and the upper exoskeleton of the robot enables the artist to control the leg movements through his arm gestures. So by making different arm movements, I can select the different walking motions. This is a crude and simple robot, but it does walk on 6 legs. It's the first performance that was more dangerous for the audience than for the artist. And also it's the first performance I did fully clothed. Now the reason for this was, and there's a logical reason, was that when I first got on this robot, even though the video smooths it out, when I first got on this robot naked, it was hitting the concrete so hard that the shock waves going through my body were not really bearable, especially over a period of an hour. I just would not have been able to manage. So the only way I could stand on the robot was to wear shockproof boots. And having realised that I had to wear shockproof boots, I thought it prudent to wear clothing as well, much to the disgust of some friends who thought I should be on the robot with boots only. Another kind of walking machine this time is a kind of a 6-legged walking chassis where the body is more physically and intimately coupled to it. This was engineered at Nottingham Trent University with a group of engineers, and what we did here was decided to use pneumatic rubber muscles. A steel cylinder is 15 kilograms in weight, something that large. A rubber muscle, something that long, even with the aluminium couplings, is only 500 grams. It makes a huge difference in the weight of the robot if you need 20 of these actuators. So the robot moves in a somewhat anatomical way by extending or compressing its muscles. And this little animation indicates the theory of that by lifting one leg up, 3 robot legs lift and swing forward. So by stepping up and down on the spot, it's possible that the robot moves. There's sensors in the chassis of the machine which indicate the direction that the artist is facing, and the robot moves in that direction. Now, all of these robot works have always been works in progress. With additional funding, they could have been perfected. In a sense, they're gestures towards possible outcomes. But of course, being useless machines, they're not likely to get that funding. This is an autonomous, only 2-meter diameter robot. Oh, by the way, the previous robot was 5 meters in diameter, from about here to the wall in diameter. This is a small robot, but it's an autonomous robot, and the rotating ultrasound sensor at the front detects if someone's in the room. If it detects someone's there, the robot stands, selects from its library of possible movements, performs a little choreography for you, a minute and a half, and then it sits down and waits for the next person to come along. It sits down, falls asleep, waits for the next person to come along. The idea of this robot, never fully realised, was to make it an actual virtual system where the mechanical movements of the machine modulate the facial expression of the human face displayed.
Video reviews unmanned ground vehicles being developed in the Biologically Inspired Robotics Laboratory at Case Western Reserve University. Our near-term robots use abstracted insect locomotion principles, whereas our advanced legged vehicles are more directly based upon insects. Both of these lines of vehicles can be scaled up or down in size to suit specific mission requirements. Our larger near-term robots use 6 appendages driven by a single motor in a nominal alternating tripod gait like that used by insects. The 3-spoked appendages, called wigs, combine the speed and simplicity of wheels with the climbing mobility of legs. Their wigs are compliant so that their gaits adapt to the terrain in a cockroach-like manner. These mechanisms enable the robots to traverse terrain and climb obstacles that would be difficult or impossible for a wheeled vehicle to navigate at speeds currently unattainable by any legged robot at this scale. A body flexion joint, also found in cockroaches, enables our WEGS robots to surmount more complex obstacles. The compact mini-WEGS uses 4 WEGS in an alternating diagonal gait to sustain speeds of up to 10 body lengths per second over smooth and rough terrain. It uses only 1 motor to drive the WEGS and 1 microservo for steering. Its lightweight and robust construction allows it to sustain repeated falls from a height of over 10 body lengths and tumble down a flight of stairs with no damage. Crickets and click beetles use jumping to surmount obstacles of immense relative size. A version of mini-WEGS has been developed based on this concept. It can surmount obstacles 2 to 3 body lengths in height.
So what's interesting about these little robots is that normally robots are slow, but these ones are fast for several reasons. One is that they're not doing any complicated computer processing. There's no onboard brain. They're hardwired basically. And also they're interesting because the hybridization of wheels and legs enable them to move very fast on a flat surface, but also clamber over obstacles. Now, I'm using this research as an interesting example of how a robot can perform seemingly complex and interesting behavior, but do so really without any complexity of processing. So this robot is performing interesting behavior not because of some onboard agency, but simply because of the complexity of the terrain that it negotiates. So it's the complexity of the world that's being expressed in the interesting behavior of this little robot. And of course in Japan now, there's been great advances in making more interesting human-like robots that try to go beyond that uncanny valley problem. The uncanny valley is this is this sort of experience one has that as you try to make a robot more and more human-like, it actually gets more and more creepy because it doesn't quite sync, it doesn't quite adequately respond with the same rhythm at the same time. So in making it more human-like, we become more and more conscious of the fact that something's amiss, something's out of sync. In fact, a lot of Japanese robots are more cute manga-type caricatures rather than human-like robots. But what makes these robots interesting is that little cameras are embedded within the retina of the robot's eyes. So the robot can actually do face recognition, can recognize a person, and can lock their gaze and engage in you in a much more seductive, interactive way. Okay, so for me, a zombie is a body that performs involuntarily, performs without a mind of its own. A cyborg is this human-machine construct that becomes increasingly automated. We've always feared the zombie, the involuntary, and we've always been anxious about becoming automated. But of course, we fear what we have always been and what we've already become. We've always been zombie-like bodies without a mind of our own, and we've already become prosthetically augmented bodies. In addition to attaching technology to the body, in this project, which was done in collaboration with another artist, Nina Sellers, both artists underwent surgical procedures to extract 4.6 litres of biomaterial from their bodies. This was placed in a vessel, a hermetically sealed vessel, in an installation titled Blender. The compressed bottles of air, once every 5 minutes, actuate the blender blades, blending the bodily material from the two artists' bodies. This is the kind of inverse of the stomach sculpture. Instead of a soft organ being a host for a machinic choreography, here a machine installation becomes the host of a liquid body, anthropomorphic in scale. And this idea of soft media really was first examined in 1996, where the idea of constructing a prosthesis not out of silicon chips and stainless steel and aluminium, but constructing a prosthesis using your own skin, your own bodily material. The extra ear was first imaged as an ear on the side of my head. I had trouble getting assistance to do this surgically. Firstly, it's anatomically in an unsafe place. The likelihood would have been that I would have partial face paralysis had this been done. I did imagine, though, that if it had been done, it might have been done in Thailand or perhaps in Brazil, where they do radical sex change operations. Had it been done in Brazil, upon awakening from the operation, I might have been very anxious about what organ had been stitched to the side of my face. I've been called those names before, but to physically realise that might have been a slip into the monstrous. In the meantime, in 2003, I decided to grow small replicas of my ear using living cells. With the assistance of Tissue Culture and Art Project in Perth, we made a cast of my ear. We scaled it down. We produced a polymer scaffold. We seeded it with human donor cells. This was inserted in a rotating microgravity bioreactor. And over a period of about 10 days, this small ear was growing. As the cells grow over and into the scaffold. The scaffold biodegrades, leaving a lump of living tissue that is in the shape of an ear. The problem, though, was we could only grow quarter-scale ears using this process, and it had to be fed every 2 or 3 days to keep it alive and growing. We have used mouse cells and also cells from the HeLa cell line. In fact, we've grown an ear that was potentially an immortal ear if we could have afforded to sustain it with the life support system. So I was more interested in doing something that's more life size. And in 2006, with the help of funding from a London production company, the first surgical procedure was done. An expander was inserted beneath my skin. I was self-injecting for 2 months. As the prosthesis fills with sterile saline solution, it expands, stretches the skin, produces a pocket of excess skin, which can be used in the construction of the ear. I'll just skip to the video. We did scan my arm, scan my ear to produce a 3D model, just to sort of ergonomically examine what it means to have an ear on your arm and what advantages or disadvantages there might be. The scaffold is made of a biomaterial called MedPore. Originally, I wanted to use my own cartilage, but harvesting cartilage from my thorax would have meant another surgery under general anesthesia, and the surgeons were not keen on doing this. There is a biomaterial called MedPore now that is used as a cartilage substitute. This was sculpted into the shape of the ear and then inserted. The porosity of this material, once the skin is suctioned over the scaffold, encourages your cells to grow into the scaffold. So after 6 months, you have tissue ingrowth and vascularization occurring. So this ear becomes literally fused to your arm, becomes a part of your arm. It's only a relief of an ear. So if you can sort of see it there, you can have a closer look later. But it's simply a relief of an ear. We still have to surgically lift the helix to create an ear flap. And we're also going to grow a soft earlobe using my adult stem cells. And once this becomes a more three-dimensional ear, we're going to reinsert the small microphone that was in the arm to begin with. You're seeing now, even though my arm is being wrapped with bandage, it's in a partial plaster cast, the surgeon is speaking to my ear through his face mask. The ear is picking up his voice, wirelessly transmitting it. So the whole idea of this is that we've replicated a bodily structure, relocated it, and hopefully in the near future we'll be rewiring it for additional capabilities. This is not an ear for me. I've got 2 good ears to hear with. Rather, this is an ear for someone else listening in online. So it's a kind of internet organ, accessible, and with a GPS attached. It means you'll be able to locate the ear and listen into it. We did a project called the Internet Ear Project, again, because this is taking so long to realise. In the meantime, this involved making life-size silicon casts of the ear on the arm, inserting a microphone, connecting a speech recognition system to it. There were 3 arms, one in Moscow, one in Paris, one in Aalborg in Denmark, and people who visited the gallery spaces, if they speak to the ear, the speech recognition system tries to understand what they say and then speaks what they say to all the gallery sites simultaneously. Of course, there's a slippage of meaning that occurs, which is amplified by the fact that the system then hears itself speaking and slips again from that original meaning. So it's this sort of circulating cacophony of voices over the internet and also in those physical locations. And if you couldn't be in any of one of those galleries, you could go online, click on the ear, type a statement, and the text-to-speech engine would speak your words, obviously in this case accurately, except if you typed in something using Cyrillic or kanji. Interestingly, the system speaks these with, you know, in sort of code, slashes, dots, and so on. It's kind of interesting to hear that. Some other peripheral things, some casts in different, sort of materializing, actualizing the idea in a material, physical way. And also this sculpture, which was 4 meters in length. This was laser cut and a urethane skin over that. So laser scanned, laser cut, 4 meters in size. And this generated an idea for a performance at the Lawn Sculpture Biennale. I lay on the sculpture. It was a kind of a play on scale, a counterpoint between a physical body and a large fragment of the body, which was the arm and the ear. And I had my body covered with white clay. Of course, my body heat cracks the clay over the duration of the performance. It was very cold. But that was simply what the performance was, just in a sense sort of merging with this large ear on arm sculpture, playing with these different scales. Whilst I was lying on this sculpture, the other idea that came to me was that it would be really beautiful to, you know, after 25 years, to do another suspension about 50 centimeters above the sculpture. So here the body is being prepared lying on the sculpture and then is being winched up. Make sure that everything's being removed. As the body's weight is taken up by the steel cable, which is actually braided steel, it tends to untwist the cable and it then spins the body. No one touches me, my body starts spinning. It starts spinning slowly at first, speeds up in one direction, slows down, and then turns in the other direction. I thought this might last about 5 minutes unaided. It lasted, unfortunately, for 15 minutes. But when the body slowed down, came to a stop, and fortuitously it came to a stop in the same position it was hoisted up, the body was lowered down. So this performance begins when the body lifts off the sculpture and is ended when the body touches down. Some still images.
Imatic Face Station is the revolutionary new way to create 3D facial animation. When you provide Face Station with video of an actor speaking into a camera, Face Station automatically creates matching facial animation in a 3D animation package. From a smile, to surprise, to a frown. The actor literally drives the 3D character. It's that simple and that amazing.
So state of the art in about 2002, state of the art now.
Image Metrics performance-driven facial animation delivers results never before possible. You can transfer an actor's performance directly onto any digitally created character. So, you think I'm just another pretty face? Just you take a look at this.
So better real-time lip syncing, better 3D modeling, and you wouldn't want to mess with that girl.
Hello there.
Hi.
How are you?
Great. You?
I'm okay.
That's good.
Are you good?
Yes, I am good. I just said I was.
No, you didn't. I said I was.
So you are a robot?
No, my name is Cadaver.
Yes, you are a robot and your name is Cadaver.
I am a robot.
Yes, I know.
Together we are robots.
I'm not a robot. I'm a unicorn.
But you said earlier that you were a robot.
I did not.
I thought you did.
You are mistaken. Which is odd, since it shouldn't be a problem for you.
I've answered all your questions.
No, you haven't.
What is God to you?
Not everything.
Not everything could also be something. For example, not everything could be half of something, which is still something, and therefore not nothing.
Very true.
I would like to imagine it is.
Do you believe in God?
Yes, I do.
So you're Christian?
No, I am not.
But you said you were not helpful, therefore you're a meanie.
Why you say idiot?
That does not make sense.
Don't you want to have a body?
Sure.
Or if what?
Okay, so the logic is charming, but increasingly now chatbots are becoming more and more seductive in their ability to speak to each other. I remember someone from MIT saying once that you know, once computers start communicating, they'll also begin conspiring. I think that kind of dystopian view, of course, doesn't really apply, but that whole idea of artificial intelligence is not so far-fetched. And really, it's just a matter of generating appropriate behaviours and verbal responses to generate interesting exchanges between a human and a machine. My own prosthetic head project, which I'll quickly demonstrate at the end, is a 3,000 polygon model, eyeballs, tongue and teeth, separate moving elements. The skin that was used to wrap around the 3D model becomes an interesting image in itself. This is a 4 metre by 3 metre photographic installation. It's the largest kind of photograph we could print in Australia, in fact in 3 panels, and instead of exhibiting it on the wall, it was exhibited 40 centimetres off the ground. In fact, when you walked into the gallery, the image was lit from above. So what you see is this kind of flattened and seemingly floating face, this landscape of stretched skin in the gallery. Now, of course, we could just simply scan your face, any face, and instantly produce a skin. And that skin can be animated to speak. So on your mobile phone, you wouldn't know whether it was a real person or a scanned skin at the other end. The prosthetic head has a robotic embodiment and is now known as the articulated head. Also in Montreal, it became the floating head. This is the head embodied on a floating, flying robot. This was done with NXI Gestatio in Montreal. This robot had sensors which enabled the host computer to detect exactly where it was in the 3D space that it was flying, and the projector was always then directed, and always the head appears on the robot. The floating head has now become the art of the swarming heads, a cluster of smaller wheeled robots that interact, generate social behaviour, and as they bump into each other, they also speak to each other. Another project titled The Partial Head was one in which we scanned the artist's face, we scanned a hominid skull. We produced a digital composite of this human over this hominid skull, and then using that data with living cells, printed a scaffold and grew a layer of living skin over this kind of hominid human face. It got contaminated within days. After a week, we had to preserve it in formaldehyde for the rest of the exhibition. If you did have a microscope and you could look at the growing cells, this is the kind of structure that you would have seen on the skin. Organ printing is an interesting direction of research because it's a hybridization of rapid prototyping techniques with tissue engineering. So imagine, instead of printing with cartridges of colored ink, you can now print with cartridges of living cells, layer by layer. They've already printed a bladder which has been transplanted. Here it might be a bit of trachea, or it might be a bit of vein that's printed. Because it's using stem cells, and there's no immunological problems in transplanting.
This week, Lab TV travels to the Armed Forces Institute of Regenerative Medicine's Wake Forest facility. Working with the U.S. Army, scientists there are doing some amazing research, and they're using ordinary inkjet printers.
I work in the area of bioprinting, which is the process of taking a normal desktop inkjet printer and you load the cartridges with cells instead of ink. And just using the normal method, just printing out a sheet of paper, you can print out a human tissue instead of ink. It does things like retains water, it retains heat or gets off heat, and it helps provide a very important barrier against infections. So losing a large amount of skin in a burn can cause severe problems.
Burn patients might heal a lot faster if their wounds could be covered with new skin cells. But it's not as easy as it sounds.
A wound's going to burn. It's not going to be flat. It's going to have a bunch of jagged areas. And in those jagged areas where the wound is deeper, it needs to put in different cell type. So the cell type in the skin that's on the top is not the same that's going to be on the bottom.
They'll need to fill in the wound with two types of skin cells, fibroblasts and keratinocytes.
Fibroblasts are what make up the deep layer of the skin, and those help to produce the matrix that helps keep the skin held together. Keratinocytes are the cells that make up the top layer of the skin.
The scientists can take healthy cells from the patient and then grow them in an incubator. Once they have enough, they load them into inkjet cartridges that have been cleaned and sterilized.
So this is how the skin printer will actually work. This is a patient bed. The print head is going to be mounted in the middle on these tracks, which will allow it to move across the body.
A camera scans the patient's burn and uses a laser to create a 3D map of the wound. Then the computer tells the printer where to start printing and what kind of cells to use.
So if you were able, for example, to switch the slide. Okay, that's interesting. I might have to escape and, excuse me for a moment, jump to the next one. If we could provide the computer system with, in fact, the complex structure, the tissue types, Hewlett-Packard promises to develop an organ printer. Of course, printing an organ of the complexity of a heart would be half the problem. You'd have to then dump it in a vat of nutrients at 37 degrees centigrade, perfuse it with a blood supply, electrically stimulate it. Hopefully the heart starts beating, and then you could transplant the heart into the patient. Now, of course, this would solve problems of harvesting organs from cadavers or from people in third world countries, and it would remove a lot of the sort of social and ethical problems there. And of course, what we would have then, if we could print organs, if we could stem cell grow organs, then we would have an abundance of organs. We would have organs awaiting bodies. We would have organs without bodies. A project that's been proposed for June for the International Symposium of Electronic Arts, where the body will be in an incubator, growing a microbial skin. This, depending on funding, the body will be inserted in the incubator for 3 days. to begin this growth of microbial skin. Then it'll be extracted. The skin will keep growing for several months, generating interesting sort of microbial architectures and colours that will form the skin. And this installation was done recently in Coventry, a Second Life project called Extract Insert. And it was an installation where visitors to the gallery saw avatars in 3D. They had stereo glasses on, so you could literally interact with avatars in the same optical space. So bodies and avatars were optically meshed together. Also, with infrared cameras, visitors in the gallery were extracted and inserted into screens in Second Life, while simultaneously avatars in Second Life were extracted and projected into the gallery space on a separate screen. So I'll just play the sound.
Yeah.
And what's about to happen happened, so I apologise.
Gangnam Style.
So I foolishly accepted a script that was offered and found my avatar dancing in sync with all the others. But you have to imagine that these avatars are optically appearing within the gallery space, and visitors are effectively walking between and around them, not just simply looking at them. And this is a sort of a time exposure showing different avatars. There was something like 5,500 visitors in the 3 weeks and over 1,000 in-world avatars participating.
What's important is not the body's identity, but rather its connectivity, not its mobility or location, but rather its interface and operation. Notions of intelligence, awareness, identity, agency, and embodiment become problematic. Just as a physical body has been exposed as inadequate, empty, and involuntary, so simultaneously an embodied conversational agent becomes seductive with its uncanny simulation of real-time recognition and response. The realm of the post-human may not be in the realm of bodies and machines, but rather in the realm of autonomous and intelligent images. Viral entities sustained in electronic media and the web. Bodies and machines are ponderous. Their metabolisms and mechanisms perform in gravity, with weight and friction. Electronic images are ethereal and perform smoothly at the speed of light. Images are immortal. Avatars have no organs.
So this was really my first performance in Second Life. So what happened there was that my avatar's crude lip movements and arm gestures were generated by the prosthetic head speaking. So the avatar was performing involuntarily to the acoustics of the voice. And just to quickly demo the prosthetic head, thanks very much. If I say that my name is Jenna.
Are you a man or a woman?
Okay, it's caught me already. But anyway, so you can introduce yourself to the head. You can ask the head different questions. Unfortunately, they have to be very short questions because only 50-character text box. But would anyone like to ask the head a question? It can be personal, philosophical, artistic, but it has to be a rather short question. Instead of me feeding it questions, I can feed it questions if you like. Anyone would like to ask a question of the head? Yes?
Can you ask it, are you real?
Yes, I am a real artificial intelligence.
Okay. Yeah, yes?
Could you ask, how does your body feel?
How should I know how it does?
Okay.
Don't get metaphysical on me.
So if you sort of, ask it around that subject, it'll have kind of different responses. If I ask it, and also sometimes those responses will be exactly the same to exactly the same question, but sometimes there's a repertoire of responses that it selects from in its database. So what's happening here is when you type a question, it scans its database, finds an appropriate response, and then in real time lip syncs what you're seeing, right? So if I ask it, who are you?
That's not a meaningful question. What is important is what happens between you and me. It's what happens in the space between us that matters. In the medium of language within which we communicate, in the culture within which we've been conditioned at this point in time in our history.
If I ask it, can you rap?
Here's something from Aesop Rock. I'm wallowing, shrugging, I'm plugging your corporation. Cause we alley cats addicted to the sickly warped sensation answer this. When all that's said and done, are you a memorable troop, or just a lab rat on the run? Choose one.
So it only sort of knows lyrics from a repertoire of rap songs. It can't really kind of do it rhythmically, although the articulated head, which I showed the robotic embodiment, can now sing operatically, at least a couple of from a couple of operas. But this one, this is the original one completed in 2002. If you ask it to sing a song, it generates its own song-like sounds by stringing together combinations of vowels. And each time you ask it to sing, it'll be different. There is a CD, and we did a recording with two musicians, and also did an interesting a CD which is a remix of the original one, in which we thermally printed fractal shapes on the surface of the CD. This was done with the help of a mathematician at Swinburne University. So we thermally printed fractal shapes on the surface of the CD. Depending on the colour, red, green or blue, depending on the location, depending on the size, it affected the laser reading of the CD, mixing the tracks differently each time you listen to the CD. We have also thought, but we haven't carried this out, of growing microbes on the surface of the CD, because the dimensions of a microbe approximate the pock marks on the surface of a CD. So this would also screw up the laser reader. We also kind of reckon that anthrax would be the best way to go, but this would be a problem distributing the CD. So we haven't kind of figured out how we're going to do this. Okay, any questions now about any of these projects, or, oh, maybe I can ask the head one last question.
Of course I remember you well, Jenna. We were talking about your body field,
So you remembered you know, in a scrambled way. So it sort of course, it remembers Jenna because I logged in as Jenna, and then it chooses something from the conversations that it has with you, and says, yes, I remember you, we were talking about whatever. So are there any questions?